This is the simple F1 discovery that made F1 cars turn fast. Throughout the history of F1, teams have been constantly trying to unveil discoveries that could help them win races. And one of them led to what is now known as the ground effect, which made F1 so fast that the FIA had to even ban it. But what exactly is it? The ground effect is an aerodynamic effect that increases car downforce by creating low air pressure between the floor and track. In other words, it uses airflow going between the floor and track to make the car squeeze into the ground and go fast through turns. And sometimes into the wall from going too fast, but this effect first came into Formula 1 in 1977 with the Lotus 78, primarily by Lotus engineers Tony Rudd and Peter Wright, who researched and experimented with the effect since 1960. The car performed incredibly well in the 1977 season, where Lotus got the second place in the Constructors, which is quite impressive knowing that they had 15 cars not even finish the race, with most retirements being because of mechanical failures. However, they won the 1978 championship, so the comeback was real. Lotus's success in the 1978 season, where their driver Mario Andretti won the driver championship too, proved the ground effect to be revolutionary in the sport. And so other teams such as Williams, Ligier, and Brabham also started developing cars using the ground effect. But how exactly does the ground effect work? The ground effect relies on primarily two physics principles, that being the Venturi effect and Bernoulli's principle. However, in order to understand Venturi's effect, we have to first understand Bernoulli's principle, which says that for horizontal flow, an increase in velocity leads to a decrease in pressure. This can be explained using Bernoulli's equation, which takes into account pressure, velocity, and elevation changes between 2 points. This ties in directly with the Venturi effect, which says that a fluid flowing through a reduced surface area will result in a drop in pressure, meaning that you can find the formula for calculating pressure and velocity changes between 2 points. But how does all of this fluid nonsense tie into making an F1 car yeet through a turn at 200 plus kilometers per hour? When an F1 car is accelerating, it is being restricted by air, which counts as a drag force. And drag forces are big no-nos because they resist the car from going fast. But this air can be used to make the car stick to the track if utilized correctly. Since air is a fluid, the application of Venturi's effect between the ground and floor helps separate that incoming air into two pressure parts, making the car generate downforce. Because when an F1 car is lowered to the ground, the area for the air to travel underneath the car decreases and the air's velocity increases, so the air pressure in that section becomes lower due to Venturi's effect and Bernoulli's principle. This makes the car have more downforce as higher pressure is mostly pushing the car into the ground. And this means that more traction is increased through corners and makes the car fly into turns like it's a Ferrari peak in an unranked garage game. However, whilst the ground effect sounds like a concept with no cons, it does have its limitations, some of which even led to the ground effect being banned from F1 back in 1983 up until 2022. Back in the 1980s, when F1 safety was essentially the equivalent of duct taping a mattress on a concrete barrier, the ground effect had raised major safety concerns. The primary reason being that the ground effect relies on decreasing floor and track gap, which is enclosed with the car's side skirts. The Lotus 78 used sliding skirts, which made the car's bottom sealed even through surface changes. When these side skirts are this low to the ground, any type of skirt penetrating damage or a bump that would cause air to leak out from the seal could cause the car to suddenly lose balance aerodynamically and leave half of the grid married to a concrete wall. And since the balance loss was incredibly sudden, drivers had practically no chance of correcting the car from spinning. And because of this big risk for safety, the FIA banned the ground effect for 40 years and issued flat bottom car regulations from the 1983 season. This caused teams to look for other solutions to ensure downforce on cars, some of which include advanced front and rear wing designs and barge boards, components still relying on fluid pressure manipulation. However, another big problem with air pressure manipulation is a concept called dirty air. When an F1 car is driving straight, parts of the car are pushing the air away from it, and this creates a short gap of reduced drag force behind the car, which helps others behind it accelerate faster due to less forces resisting the car's motion. This concept is called slipstream, which is why many many drivers utilize it to overtake cars at straights. However, what would the drag forces behind an F1 car look like during a turn? Well, when the car is turning, the direction of drag force gap behind the car also changes, but in a very complex manner, which can cause cars behind to lose aerodynamic balance just because of how air forms behind the car in front. So your attempt at an awesome TikTok edit where the overtake suddenly becomes an unplanned visit to the backrooms.
Not very fun.
That's why the FIA is trying to combat this problem with some of the new upcoming 2026 regulations, such as reducing overall downforce by 30%, replacing the DRS system with a manual override mode, and the simplification of floor designs. So whilst this theoretically will make cars slower at turns, it may provide better racing quality. Because let's be honest, it's better to have cars slow on the turns than to only see overtakes being done on straights due to slipstream and drivers doing Venturi with a steering wheel during turns behind other cars. But hey, that's just my opinion. Nonetheless, despite the mixed reactions, the ground effect discovery has most certainly marked itself to be important in the history books of F1, and has helped pave the path of advanced aerodynamics for modern Formula 1 cars. Whilst the danger that the ground effect brought to F1 in the 1980s was insanely high, it helped contribute to making the current sphere of the sport faster, more entertaining, and most importantly, safer. So whenever you think about how F1 cars turn fast, just know that it all started because of one simple effect. However, what do you think about the ground effect in the Lotus 78? Do you think it's a good idea for F1 to step away from it in 2026? Feel free to debate me in the comments below. But once you now know about the ground effect, do you know how actually strong the F1 halo is? Well, you can find it out by clicking this video.